Alright guys, it's time to get in part 2 of our Cafe Racer build. Stick around. Alright guys, it's finally time to move forward. Now that we have that second pressure washing done, it's time to move forward to that paint and body section. I've been waiting for this part. This is usually the most favorite part to me. It's kind of how you transform the project, and I think that we're going to really make a good transformation with this part here. That said, the very first part I want to do that, I want to get a lot of sanding done so that's out of the way for my paint, but I want to start with the frame. And for those of you wondering, well, what are you going to do to the frame? We got a lot of body filler to do. Well, not a lot, but a lot of little spots. And what I mean by that, if I get forward on this frame here, again, I used an angle grinder to grind down where all the old brackets were, and they're pretty smooth, but reality is they're not perfect. And for those of you that are trying to do a project like this little stuff right here is detrimental to going from a professional grade project to just somebody's DIY, and that'll also show when somebody comes to buy it, because if they see stuff like this painted over and it looks rough and dingy, you're not going to get the money you want out of it if you're doing a project to sell. So we got to hit all these spots with a little bit of body filler, nothing big, but even the factory cracks you can see here, we're going to fill all that in. That's not necessary to be there, so we want to make sure that that's not visible when we spray this frame. So I'm going to start getting all that on there. We'll get it sanded off, and then we'll start getting this thing ready for paint, but I wanted to point that out. Now, for those of you that are out here are trying to do this project and maybe replicate the same project that I'm doing, don't worry, I will show you each and individual part that I do body work and show you exactly what's been done to it. And also, I will put a list at the end of, whether it be 1 or 2 part series, I'll put a list at the end of all the parts that I use. So for anything you guys need, if you guys want to make an exact replica of the build that I'm doing right now, you'll be able to do that on your own. Alright, and so while the frame is now drying with the Bondo itself, we're going to move on to the next piece, and that is our custom-made tailpiece. Now, our rear cowl here is, well, at least was going to have carbon fiber wrapped around it, but because I don't leave my bike outside in extreme heat, I don't really have to worry about warping. For those of you that may want to leave your bikes outside if you do this, you should definitely consider wrapping it with at least fiberglass. Again, I was going to do carbon fiber, whatever you want. It helps hold the structure together, but I don't think that I'm going to have a problem with that, because I don't see this bike getting over 220 degrees sitting outside, because it's never left out. It's pretty much a custom showpiece. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and leave this plastic, but it's got a lot of body filler that has to happen, because for whatever reason when printed, it's got these weird edges that are supposed to be rounded, but they're not. So that has to get sanded down, and I obviously want to get rid of all my layer lines. It's not going to work for me. So I need to do a light sand, hit it with a nice smooth coat of Bondo or body filler, and then I'm going to go ahead and sand it all down, and it should be ready to go. Alright, and moving forward, the frame is pretty much done. Now I will say I didn't get it perfect. I was filling in and filling in and filling in. And the problem is just the metal is so uneven from the factory welds. I did not want to grind them down, and I'll tell you the only real complaint I have so far with this bike from Yamaha is that the metal is so soft. It's like, not even like mild steel. I don't know what it is, but you can grind through it in a second. Even with a sander, the sand sands the metal. You'd think it was aluminum, so I didn't want to mess with it too much because I didn't want to worry about making it unsafe, just to make it a little bit more appealing. But overall, you can see all the spots that got filled in, and I'm still waiting for the cowl to finish hardening, and then I'll get that sanded. But for now, we're going to move to the biggest headache. Well, actually, not so much the biggest headache. What you would think would be, there's not a whole lot that has to be done to this. I need to sand it down. I do have body filler again, as we talked about in the very back side of this, but I spent the money on this tank, and because of that, I shouldn't have a whole lot of dings or dents to deal with. I have a couple scratches and a couple little spots here and there, but for the most part, this thing should be pretty well good to go. I'm going to go ahead and hit it with the sand, then I'll put my body filler on the little bit that I need, and then we'll do the final sand on it. So moving forward with the rear cowl now perfectly ready for paint, it's time to move on to our front fender. Now our front fender is very large and ugly, and if you look at stock pictures, you'll see it wraps halfway around the wheel, which we don't want. And so I just went ahead and took a marker and kind of cut it the way I wanted it, and basically I'm going to be cutting off maybe 3 or 4 inches back here on the rear half. This is the side coming down to the motor, and the very front, I never liked this, even with sport bikes, how they have this big foolish gap, so we're kind of cutting that down at an angle. We're going to bring it up like this, and we're going to cut another 3 or 4 inches off the front. So in total, we're losing 6 to 8 inches on overall length, and it's going to give that more appealing look. Now some people will do one of these builds with no front fender, and while it looks kind of cool, being that it's going to be a scrambler mix, scrambler is kind of more of an off-road tire, and you definitely don't want to go off-roading without some sort of front fender, because, well, it'd be really unfun. So I'm going to go ahead and use a jigsaw. I'm going to cut this out right now, and I'll shape it, and I'll show you guys what we come up with. Alright, so here's what we're working with. Basically, you can see I cut off the long section in the front and quite a bit in the back. Now, I debated cutting a little bit more in the back. I'm still kind of unsure about it. It's not too long, but again, we're going to have knobby tires, and I really don't want to have a lot of stuff splashing against the bike, and so I think that's probably about the right size. You can kind of see the way it looks from the top. I kept it a kind of a squared off look, just like the OEM factory look. So we got rid of a little bit of this hook here, cleaned it up a little bit, and I think that ought to be good. So I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to go ahead and sand this thing down. We'll have this thing ready for prep, and then we're going to start getting into things. We're going to paint probably all the stuff that's going to be black, like the frame, the subframe, and things of that nature. Alright guys, so I once again have the temporary paint booth set up right now, which is simply 3 walls and a floor of plastic to make sure that there's no overspray going everywhere. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to spray all our black. Now, we know the frame's black, the swing arm's going to be black, the base of the shocks are going to be black, a couple levers and stuff are going to be black, and then the inside of that tail cowl will be black. I have a few other small things to get it black, but that'll be hand spraying, that'll be done afterwards. For now, these are the major components, and we're going to go ahead and spray them. Alright guys, it's time for our black pearl base coat. Alright guys, on to core number 3. Alright, and getting ready to spray that clear, guys. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to peel off all this taped up stuff because we know that, well, you can't keep it on there if you want to spray the clear. So, okay, good. I thought that was a boo-boo. Don't get all weird with all you ASMR or whatever that's called. I'm not trying to be weird. I want no weirdos on the channel. Color number 4. Alright, so now that everything's been painted, it's time to move forward. We're going to let these things sit overnight. I want it to be completely hardened and good to go. We can start putting the bike back together. But now that you've seen all the colors put together, you know what the actual livery would be from. I'm not going to verbally say that because I don't know if there's some sort of copyright on it. That's the reason I didn't put the logo on it. And plus, I think the logo's kind of tacky. No offense to that company. But for my build, personally, I didn't want it. And now you guys know what that is from. So let's let these things sleep overnight. Let's come back tomorrow after I clean everything up and we'll start getting things assembled. All right, so guys, it's the next day. Everything is finally dried, is not tacky anymore, and feels pristine. And wow, it looks pristine. I gotta tell you, I was gonna say it looks new, but I think it's better than new. This is gonna be an incredible build. I can't wait to start putting together. That said, it's time to move forward and get this thing done. All right, so jumping into it, the very first thing that I want to do to this frame sitting right here is get it to be a rolling chassis. Now to do that, I've got to get the tires on the rims, and then I've got to get the suspension on so it can actually be a freestanding bike before we get the motor or anything else put on it. So let's get into that. Okay, and so one of the first things I want to point out, I sprayed these wheels, and I didn't even prep them. I didn't sand them down, I just pretty much wiped them down and cleaned them. I didn't expect this paint to stay on. Our powder coater is backed up a little ways, and I didn't want that to hold the build, so I went ahead and just sprayed them. But you'll see here there's already chipping. They literally fell over and barely touched each other, and they're already chipping. So I don't expect this to look pretty, but it'll get the job done for now, and then in the future I'll have them powder coated. But I kind of wanted to point that out. With that said, it is time to get these tires on, and here's our tires of choice. These are a Shinko, and they are a scrambler tire. So you'll see that they are a predominantly off-road, but a partially on-road tire. They do a little bit of both, and this is what's going to give it that true scrambler look for the most part. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to throw these things on right now, and we'll see what they look like. Okay, and so before I go mounting the tires, I need to change these valve stems because I don't trust valve stems from 1982, obviously. Now, I don't have any of the metal post types, but I do have some that used to be air pressure sensor ones. I just went ahead and cut that off. I like these because these are very stiff. I don't have to worry about them bending or cracking at the base like many power sport ones do. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these out real quick. I'll throw these in, and then again, we'll throw on the tires. Okay, so back tires on and perfect. It did eat all the paint off the edge of the wheel. I assumed it was going to happen, not really worried about that. I guess that goes with the patina. I don't know, whatever. But we have a problem. I went to install the front tire you'll see right here, and for some reason they sent me a 19-inch tire. And probably the reason they did that is because they don't make an 18-inch tire in this size. I don't know how I didn't notice that. So I have to order a different tire. Don't worry about that. I'll change up the tire situation, whether it be both of them or just a single one to match as close as it can. Nonetheless, it's time to move forward. We're going to put the suspension on the frame. Okay, and so as you can tell, we are starting with installing the front forks that are fully rebuilt first, and the reason for that, I want it to be able to hold itself up and not teeter-totter like it is, so we're going to get those in first. As you can see, I went ahead and slid everything up. We do have brand new shock boots that'll kind of cover the silver at the bottom. I was going to go ahead and wrap the top so there was no silver or chrome. I kind of like it though. I think it's kind of an accent, so I don't know what I'm going to do with that yet. But the way I'm doing it is I went ahead and lowered it, and with our clip-ons being our cafe-style racer, I want it to basically clip on the top, not the lower. I don't want to be hunched over like an old man. I want to make sure that I got a little bit of lift because you don't want that when you're going on and off road. So if that's the route we go and the tires work out to be able to do that, I would like to have just a small gap here and a small gap here. That'll give us pretty close to a 2-inch drop in the front. I don't want any more than that because I need clearance as well. Okay, and so there is the front suspension complete. It's time to move on and install this beautiful rear swing arm and nice monoshock. And with the rear suspension and now complete, there is one thing I'd like to point out. Well, first of all, I had to cut the middle seat bracket, and the reason why was it was interfering with the spring right here. Now, I didn't realize it sat so high for whatever reason, and so I just cut that back. Not a big deal. It's not really for support. It's to hold the seat, which will be perfectly held fine, so that won't be a problem. However, the part that I have a problem with is the inner cartridge right here. I really wish I could have taken this apart and basically shot blasted or media blasted to make it look brand new. The problem is I don't have the spring compressor to make this thing compress to get it off. Essentially, if you guys want to do this, you'll get the spring compressors. They'll squeeze the spring. There's 2 plates right here. These round things, they'll slide right out and the spring will come right off. Now, I couldn't do that right now. However, probably in the near future, when I have the wheels powder coated, I will send this shock or this spring in to get coated and do that. But for now, we'll just have to deal with the way it is. Let's move forward. All right, so moving forward, we got the back wheel on now, and I was able to find a matching tire, close enough matching tire, which is a Bridgestone Battle Axe. The only difference is the blocks are a little offset. It'll look perfectly fine, so I went ahead and ordered that. But I threw on the back wheel. I threw on the brake lever, as you see right there. The only thing I didn't connect was the back brake right there, because when I put the brand new chain that we have coming, or that I have, it will go back or forth to a certain degree, and I'll need to readjust that. And obviously, I can't put the chain on until I put the engine in, so on and so forth. So I went ahead and also threw in the coils. They're in and out of the way, so when I put the engine up, I won't have to fight to try to get those in there. And last but not least, I went ahead and put in our battery tray, as you see right there, with a black silicone. If for some reason that doesn't stick well enough, I'll put a couple screws to the bottom, but that should be good. With that said, it's time to move forward. Okay, so quick update. As you'll know, yes, the bike's upside down, but I made a change, and that change is that you'll see we no longer have the scrambler tires, and I'll tell you why. I was getting ready to order the front one, even though it wasn't an exact match, I was okay with that, and the more that I looked at the back tire, the more it really just looked like a dirt bike tire. Because these rims are so narrow, it just bulged out like a dirt bike tire. It really didn't give that cool scrambler look, so I just really wasn't okay with it. So I decided to go with the regular street tire, though they look great, I will say that. And yes, I flipped this bike upside down to put the front wheel on. I mean, they do it on BMX, and this is about the same power, so why not? With that said, moving forward, it's time to go ahead and flip this thing back up and shove that thing right there into it. Okay, so being that I am a genius and I decided to take off the service stand for a little weight savings, now I gotta figure out a way to get this bike to stand up straight and get that motor in it. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to tilt it back and get this lower bolt through down here, that one there, and then I can kind of tilt it up with the jack. Hopefully, that's the typical way of doing a bike. The problem is I can't even put spools on the back of it because where am I gonna put them? So I gotta kind of manually do this. It's not gonna be real fun, but I'll figure it out. One thing else I want to point out is that another spot that I missed in paint. Now I tell you, I was like, give me a spot this paint. I had extra paint, I didn't know what to do with it. Just even find a spot. I couldn't find nothing. Always happens. Quick update. So as you can see, the motor is now in. Now I didn't do it myself. I did need a second hands, and the reason why is I needed somebody to hold that back up solid so it wouldn't like tilt left and right since I didn't have a stool or a stand to put it on. And then what I did was, just like I said, I kicked the bottom of that engine up and got the lower bolt through, and then I was able to basically cradle the thing and pick it up and just slide the mid bolt through, and then loosely get all these in, and now it's good to go and mounted. Now, if you haven't realized, basically what I'm doing is I'm mounting all the big heavy stuff first, because the smaller stuff could be situated around it as we go on. And keep in mind, there's still a lot of more custom stuff to go on this bike, so it's not going to be stock bolt-on stuff. So that's kind of why we have to keep our heads up and make sure that we're not missing anything. But I think what I'm going to do right now is bolt on the exhaust and see how it fits up. All right, and so the exhaust is on and looking fantastic. We do have to make some brackets in the back. As you'll see, we have a bracket that has to go from here to our rear peg area. And before we do that right now, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into something else, because we're gonna come back to this, and the reason why is I have to get on the CNC machine and then do some custom work in CAD Works to get this thing to have a custom bracket. I don't want just a cheap old plain bracket going to it. I want something that looks sick. So I'll design and make that. I'll show you what I do with that, but we'll come back to that. For now, we're gonna put it on our gorgeous orange matching chain. So for those of you that may have not done custom length chains in the past, this one also isn't custom length. This is actually just a general length. It usually comes with an extra foot or so for most bikes, so you can cut it to the size you want. Now, essentially what I have to do is I have to make sure that my axle coming through this this hole right here, because the hole's about 2 inches, the axle's only 1/2 inch or whatever it is, it's got room to move back and forth. That's what these adjusters are for. But I gotta make sure that I don't, one, cut the chain too short, and I also have to make sure it's not too long. Understanding that the chain is going to stretch a bit as well. So what I have is I have it in the middle right now, and I do want to kick it as far back as I can to give that kind of that lowrider look, but keep in mind that I do have to cut this thing, and I need to make sure that it's not too long. So you'll see where this is going to be on a pivot point here. This is going to have to stay here. The next part I'm going to have to cut is the one. We want to look at the darker black, or the raw metal pieces back here. This one, obviously, this link would be too long because it'd be overlapping, so I have to go to the next one back, which would be this one here. So what I have to do is take an angle grinder, and I have to grind off this tip right here, which is on the outside of that raw metal link, so it will match up with this one. We'll butt them up right next to each other after they're cut, and then what I'll do is I'll be able to put in our basically our chain link, our master link, and then it should be good. I'll be able to tighten this wheel down, and the back wheel will officially be done. Okay, and to cut it, it's really simple. You're going to want to get yourself an angle grinder with a cutoff blade, really easy. And then obviously we had just marked, I took a black marker and marked this so I knew which one to cut. I'm going to go ahead and grind off the nipple that you'll see right here, because this thing has to pop off there, and then cut this side of the link in half. And then what happens is I'm going to take a screwdriver, I'm going to pry it in between right here, and pop this piece off, and it'll slide right out. Okay, so with your chain finally cut, you want to go ahead and butt up the two raw metal links, as you'll see right here, and then slide your master link in from the back. And with that said, typically there is two different types of links that come with most chain kits. You'll have the typical master link style that has the locking mechanism right here, which essentially this slides over top of it, and then this locks that clip into place. And then you have the punch style, which basically is this here. This slides over here, and you take a punch, and it'll punch this in and widen that out. I've had bad luck with these ones breaking in the past, so what I will do with these are my preferred style, I will put a bead of weld over top of that. It'll look almost identical to this except slightly rounder because it'll be weld, and it doesn't ever come off, where these are also known to fail as well. But for now, we're going to put this one on because I don't want to weld right now. I got too many things to do. So the rest of it's pretty easy, guys. All you want to do is you want about a 1/2 inch of play on your chain. At least that's what I shoot for, because ultimately I want overall about a 3/4 inch amount of play. And when you sit on the bike, it's actually going to tighten up a little bit. Not so much on this one because it's got a pretty stiff suspension, but most bikes, you're going to want about a 1/2 inch, because keep in mind, as you sit on it, it's going to tighten up, but the chain's also going to stretch too, so I really want it to get around 3/4 of an inch. So I start with 1/2 inch, and usually it ends up where I want it to be. Now, once you've got the chain on, you've got your master link on, it's pretty straightforward. You see there's little notches right here, and see this little slit you can see right here. Now what you're going to do is you're going to line that up equally on both sides of this, and once that's done, you're going to use these things to tighten it where it needs to be, and then ultimately you're going to tighten down your main axle bolt and put in your retainer right here, or your cotter pin, and that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish basically adjusting the brake, because we never did that. We need to get the back wheel on first, and then I got to throw on the very side cover because, well, it's not on there. And then obviously I'll be putting on the gear shifter, and that will conclude the lower half of this part. And so moving forward, it's time to get to electrical. Now, electrical isn't just electrical. We have to put the forward controls on to get the electrical set up. We also have to install the front brake to get the forward controls on. So there's things that have to go together with this stuff. But the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start getting the harness laid out and stretched across, get these forward controls on, and see if I can kind of minimize some of this wiring. Okay, so there you have our mess of a loom. Now I need to get this thing cleaned up with some Windex so it is not so dirty, but there are a couple upgrades that we'll be doing. To start, we obviously have new grips. We're not putting the old ones on, so you'll see those there. And then we have an upgraded Ninja 300 master cylinder that'll help this bike stop a little bit better than the original. Okay, while installing these forward controls, the left-hand side went great. The right-hand side, I got a little bit of an unexpected surprise when I pulled off the grip, and you can kind of see what that is. Now, this has to be replaced. You could probably make it work. Here's the problem. Without the plastic being all the way down and being cracked like that, your grip's going to end up touching this and sticking, which means sticking throttle, which is 100% not good. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and get to the 3D printer. I'll design one of these, we'll throw it on, and we should be good to go. Alright guys, so about 20 minutes later, here is our throttle tube. Pretty simple and easy to do. One thing I do want to point out, if I wanted to modify this section right here, this would actually give me a better throttle response or better mid-range if I wanted to. It's pretty easy to do, but right now I'm keeping it kind of stock in a linear position the way it sits. But I'm gonna go ahead and print this thing out, and we'll get it on the bike and get ready to go. Okay, so 3D printing is finally done. We have our throttle tube. Let's go ahead and throw this thing on and make sure it works. Absolutely perfect, spot on. Works exactly like it should. All right, I want to give you guys an update on the wiring, on at least in the back half of the bike. I ain't gonna lie, the wiring, hands down, has been the most difficult task of this project by far. And the reason that is because what we're doing is we're getting rid of, again, that air box here, and all the things that are wrapped around it, including the regulator, the rectifier, and all that, fuse box, and we're shoving it all inside this little tiny section of the tail. Now, I know that doesn't look like the cleanest thing in the world, but if I'm being honest, I could have got it a little bit cleaner, but that would have meant I had to cut out all these connectors and put basically straight connections. And obviously when you do that, you're gonna have a failure at some point. How many failures is the question. So I didn't want to do that, especially on an older bike. I was able to get the igniter right here, got the starter solenoid right here, and then I went ahead and wired in a newer fuse box out of, like, I think it's the CBR 1000RR, to give it a more modern fuse. That way, if you're on the road and you have a fuse go bad, those old glass tube ones, you're not going to find them. These you'll be able to find. So I got that all set now, and you'll see the wiring is, for the most part, looking from the back, hidden. It obviously runs up the back side here, and that back side there, and that side right there. So looking at it from the side, it gives us the clean look that we wanted. I'm super excited about that. And yes, I know the back wheel is still shedding paint everywhere. That thing sheds like a German Shepherd. Alright guys, so here is our rear exhaust bracket. As you can see, we're going to be cutting these out basically on our CNC machine, which we've not used before. I've made a few of them, but I've never used this particular one. But we're going to need one on each side of the bike, and then we'll probably be coupling this with a headlight bracket because we need to do it pretty much one time only. That way we're not wasting metal. We can get this project moving forward. Now, what I'll be doing right now is saving this as a DXF file. Now, that doesn't mean much to you, but basically that means that this next program can read the information, and then it'll turn it into a G-code format, just like a 3D printer, and send it to the CNC machine. So let's go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you the CNC machine work, and hopefully we get a prize out of it. And there's our exhaust brackets. So the headlight is now mounted, and I've had to take it on and off a few times. In fact, I scratched a little bit right here, not a big deal. But trying to figure out exactly how the wire is going to go. You can see how tight the wire fitting is getting to the back of the headlight underneath the ignition. Now all the lights basically reside inside this headlight, so it's kind of important to keep the headlight out, but also at the same time, I've got to do all the wiring for the gauges, and so I need to do that at the same time. So I decided to go ahead and modify the bracket. Initially, I was going to make my own bracket with the CNC machine, and then I realized I didn't need to. These bolts actually don't go right here. This does right here, and you'll see that basically that is the way the mounting bracket's going to sit on. And what you'll notice is the bracket was much larger. I cut it off right here and then just tapped 2 holes, and then I'll put nuts on the back of it here, and this should be about perfect. You'll see it'll sit just like that. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll throw this on, I'll finish the wiring up front, and then I'll show you officially what it looks like. Okay, and it's finally time to get these things installed. We also have to do a fresh oil change, or oil in it, I should say, with a brand new oil filter and a brand new fuel filter. So let's go ahead, throw these things on. And so now the carbs are fully installed, and something I do want to point out is that if you guys are having a tough time and you're working on your XS400 and you can't get your carbs back into the boots here, one easy, quick, simple method to get those in there is simply using a heat gun. Now, all you have to do is take a heat gun and get it nice and pliable. Now, if you have dry rot or anything of that nature, you want to make sure not to use those and just simply replace them. However, if it's just simple hard rubber, a heat gun will do the trick. All you have to do is get on the other side of the bike. You can leverage your elbow back here after heating them up, and they'll pop right in. Now, with that said, these things are fully installed. I do have a custom 3D printed air box that we have to throw in. I don't know how well this will work, because a lot of these type of carburetors suffer from a problem when the bike's going down. The wind pulling this way will take from the suction of the engine pulling in gas. So if that's the case, I'll be able to make a custom cover over top of that that'll either suck air from up or down, eliminating the air pulling away. We'll just have to test it and see how it goes. The one problem I do have right now is that my starter wire right here is kind of in the way, so I have to kind of maneuver that out of the way. But let me go ahead and see if I can get that thing on, and I'll show you exactly what it looks like. Alright, wow, that is absolute perfect fitment. I couldn't have asked for something better. Super excited about that. Now it's time to move forward. I told you I have to get some oil in this thing and a brand new oil filter. To put the oil filter in, it's pretty simple. I have to take out this bolt right here. This whole case will come down here, and then I'll install this. Now I have to be careful because I painted all this. I have to take a straight edge or an eraser all around the edge so it won't chip. Once I get that done, I'll stand the bike straight up and down, and you'll see there's 2 lines here, here, and here. I want the oil to fill right to the center. Now some people will say you need X amount of quarts. I feel like every bike's slightly different, especially how long it sits and how much oil you drained out of it. So make sure to get that oil within that window right there when the bike's perfectly level. Alright guys, it is finally time to start installing the rest of the body. And the very first thing I'm going to start with is our retro striped fender. I don't think we need these anymore. Okay, well if you guys are wondering exactly why that bolt is still sticking out on this frame, there's a good reason. And that reason is, if you guys are using LED turn signals, you're going to have a problem where they are stuck on. They're not blinking. And that's because there's a cool little relay stuck all the way inside this frame in the worst position ever that you got to dig out and replace with an electronic one. I'm going to do that now and get this piece right here bolted back on. Okay, and with that done, I don't know about you guys, but it's time to put on the gas tank, and I'm excited to see what it looks like. Let's get it done. Wow, that tank looks absolutely amazing. Now, I'm not going to back up and show the whole bike because we have one more important part of the puzzle, and that's making a seat right here. Let's get into it. Okay, and now with the seat base plate sitting on the actual bike itself, I have some modifications to do. You'll notice that there is kind of a gap, and the reason that is because electronics really aren't clearing, mostly the posts on the starter solenoid, and I have absolutely no room to go below. You can see how low this is, and it's already on the stiffest setting of the shock. So What I need to do probably is make some short spacers, as well as I'm going to do a little bit of a cutout on the front right here. Even with the spacer, it would probably just about clear. But I'm going to go ahead and cut that section out there and put kind of an aluminum cap over that, just to make sure that when you're riding, you ain't getting cut with nothing. Okay, so I went ahead and did my cutout like I shared with you, and went ahead and purchased 1/2-inch nylon spacers that will basically bring the seat up a 1/2 inch, obviously. And then what I need to do now, since the seat's gonna have a gap, I will go ahead and make a small kind of a side skirt here, very thin like I originally was going to help cover that gap once the seat is finished. Before I can get to that though, I've got a bunch of foam and some pretty cool fabric I wanna show you that I'm gonna make the actual seat out of. Okay, and so there is our aluminum nut saver plate. I'm gonna go ahead and screw that in with small screws, and then I think we can move forward using our new fabric and some foam and get this the way it's supposed to be. Okay, and there is our seat made from pure scratch. Not bad. Now, what I do have to do now, because I have some 1/2-inch spacers that are gonna be going on the bike right here, here, and obviously all 4 corners, I've got some 1/2-inch channel that I'm gonna basically trim and mold to fit this right here underneath the bottom of the seat so it'll hide the gap. So let me do that, I'll get it painted, all bolted together, and then we'll put the seat on. All right, guys, and moving forward, there was a couple things I needed to get done before I get this thing fired up to let you guys hear the exhaust and take it down the road. The first thing was the brake. Now, you guys know that I had a Ninja 300 front master cylinder and lever that we threw on. Problem was that I was missing the main pin that hold the brake pads in, or so I thought I was. I ended up finding it, but I ordered a new one, got that in, went ahead and used the Ninja 300 front brake line. And the reason that I did that, the original brake line, there actually was 2 of them, and there was a block right here that connected, and I didn't have the block. So I just went ahead and utilized what I already had, which was that front line from the 300. Fits almost perfect. It was a little long, but not terrible. Next was the speedometer. Now the speedometer needed its pickup, and basically what it is, it's 2 magnets. You'll see one here, and this is your pickup sensor right here, and all I had to do was make those 3 brackets. Now it's on, and now it's time to fire this thing up. All right, guys, so I went ahead and primed the fuel. I got fuel down into the carb. Let's this thing will fire up. That it? That was easy. That sounds pretty good. Good looking bike, I tell you, good looking bike. That's probably enough before I suffocate myself. Now that we know what it sounds like, I'm gonna take this thing out, I'm gonna get some glamour shots for you guys, and I'm gonna ride off in the sunset. Even though the sun's not setting. You know what I'm saying. See you guys.